Michael Phelps, a very goal oriented person. And Phelps was just very focused before this race, and they go down the wall, and as they're coming back, you see this picture of Phelps swimming perfect stroke, head directly straight looking at the wall. And the story still works. Leclos focused on the competition, whereas Phelps is focused on the wall. And to me, it's what is your wall? What can you be focused on that's directly in front of you, as opposed to all of the noise around you or the other people? And in a world full of Instagram and TikTok and craziness around you, it's very easy to get distracted and to focus on the wrong things. And my argument is to try your best to be focused on whatever the wall is in your life.
Well, Ryan Hawk, you are the host of the Learning Leader Show, and that has grown into all kinds of other things. And I'm just so excited that you have agreed to come on the Today Counts show. So welcome.
Thanks for having me, Jim. Excited to be with you.
Man, I think I told you that I purchased your book, The Pursuit of Excellence, and I've had this habit of mine probably, I don't know, maybe 20 years now. And I don't read as many books as some might think I do. I think I average about 6 to 8 books a year. And what I do is I'm pretty selective. I try to really do the research to make sure that if this is a book I'm going to buy and invest in, I'm going to read it from front to back. That's the first thing that I do. The second thing I do while I'm reading is, like a lot of people, I highlight things that speak to me, stick out. And then I have a third step. After that, I go back over the book and I read only the highlights. And then the highlights that make it to the next level, I actually write in my journal, word for word. And I am about 3/4 of the way through taking the highlights and writing them in my journal, and some of those will come out. But there's a lot to Ryan Hawk. I've been listening to you now for my wife and I were talking about it this morning, and it's been at least 3 years. It's probably more like 4 years the way time goes by, and you've really kind of inspired me to do what I'm doing now as I get older. This is something that I like to do. But what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, is I'd like to back up. And one of my big questions is, how does an accomplished quarterback get into what he's doing today, which in my opinion, you have become a thought leader, and you've been doing that by living what the title of your podcast is, as a learner. But can we go back? Talk to me about football. Where did that all start? And tell me about that, the ups and downs, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that started from a very young age. I remember my younger brother and I were begging our parents to let us play as soon as we were allowed. So for us, that was second grade when we could put the pads on, and have been a real sport oriented family. We focused heavily on just whatever sport was in season. So football, baseball, basketball, and then we'd mix in like tennis and swimming and ping pong and any other game you could compete in throughout. And I'd say, so I grew up in a very competitive household, in a healthy way, though, I would say. And we still are competitive. But football just seemed to be the one that we enjoyed and excelled at the most. I say we because I feel like it's always been a partnership with my younger brother, because we were only 2 years apart, got to play together for 2 years in high school. I think really we both needed each other. We still do. And football helped us kind of learn, especially because we played for the legendary coach Bob Gregg, as well as our offensive coordinator Ron Ollery, who are two of the most impactful people in my life still today. I just was talking with Coach Ollery this morning, in fact, about his note-taking process, where I'm just deconstructing how he's so good at that. But anyway, I think they taught us first and foremost how to work. They taught us how to be resilient. They taught us how to bounce back from adversity. They taught us what it means to be there for your teammates, what it means to be accountable, what it means to be able to be lifted to a level higher than you thought you were capable of. That's what a leader could do. I think the whole art form of leadership first was introduced to me, I would say, by those two guys, and it's plays a big role into why I study it so hard today, is because I saw the power and the impact that they had on a person like me who was not talented enough to get a college scholarship, but because of them and how they pushed me and how they lifted me to perform at levels higher than I thought I was capable of, I found myself as a senior in high school with lots of scholarship offers and was able to go and play and eventually be a starting quarterback in Division I college football and be elected team captain and then play a little bit after college as well. So I think it just shaped my entire life. And so everything that I do today stems back from those formative years when I was playing sports and learning to be a great teammate and learning how to work and prepare and to bounce back and to be resilient. That's everything to me. So I feel like I owe pretty much everything I have to great coaches, great teammates, and the sport itself.
Yeah, what were some of the highs and lows of that experience? Because, like you, my family has been crazy sports oriented, still is to this day. I mean, if you can walk, whether you're 3 years old or whether you're 93, you're involved in the holiday football game at our house. But and it's funny that you also use the word shape, because that's a very important word to me. It's part of my purpose in life, and I think a lot of times people don't take time to take an inventory of just how much they've been shaped, how much they've been given, if they can recognize that. But looking back, what would you say are some of the highlights of that kind of a life?
I mean, I got pretty fortunate. I was able to start as a freshman at Centerville High School, which had not been done before. Division I here in Ohio is our biggest division, so it's big time competition. Tradition-rich school, decades of domination, in fact, is what it was called leading up to the time when I got there, meaning we won the conference and advanced in the playoffs for decades, primarily, again, from those coaches, I think, who developed the tradition, and I was just got to be a part of that. So I'd say that was pretty amazing. My junior and senior year, I got to play with my brother for 2 years, which is definitely the highlight of our athletic careers. And then as far as the negative, I committed to go to Miami University coming out of Centerville High School. Miami University is in Oxford, Ohio, a team that plays in the Mid-American Conference. And I play quarterback, and another person who also committed a week after me was a guy named Ben Roethlisberger. For football fans, they know Ben. He played for, I feel like, 20 years with the Pittsburgh Steelers, won multiple Super Bowls. He'll be in the Hall of Fame, first ballot as soon as he's eligible, now that he's finally retired from the sport. But anyway, Ben and I battled it out for 2 years, and ultimately I learned a good lesson in those formative years was, if the person who gives us the greatest chance to win, the person who adds the most value to the team, is the one who we're going to choose. And I think as a 19-year-old, arrogant, punk, full of himself kid, as I was, it is a great lesson to be put in line, to be knocked down a few pegs, as my grandfather, my mom's dad used to say, that sometimes that's what we need. And that's certainly what I got, coming in there thinking I was on top of the world, I was going to the NFL, only to see in practice that this other guy was definitely outplaying me. And then when we both played in games, which we did for a few games as they rotated us back and forth, isn't very fun as a quarterback, but Ben also outplayed me during those times as well. And so when it's good to learn when you're 19 or 20 that the world isn't necessarily fair, doesn't care. The world doesn't care if I work out harder in the weight room or if I spend more time watching film. The world cares about who produces when it matters. And he did, and I didn't. Or he at least did it better than I did. And so in that case, he gave our team a better chance to win. And I still take from that every day today. If I'm not adding value to your life, Jim, by when you listen to my podcast or you read my books, I have not earned the right for you to spend another second of your life on anything that I put out. So I consciously think about that before every podcast I record, before every word that I write that's going to be published in a book, is if I'm not earning that. I have to earn it every time. And whatever I've done in the past doesn't matter. I have to re-earn that today and re-earn that each time. And if I don't do it, I don't expect anyone to follow what I do. And I just think that's just the approach I've taken, because I learned, again, when I was pretty young, that if you don't do that, you have not earned anything. It doesn't matter how good I was in high school. It doesn't matter what I did in practice the day before. It doesn't matter that I stayed in the weight room a long time. What matters is the fact that I did not add enough value to your life for you then to want to either choose me as the starting quarterback, or choose to listen to my show, or choose to read my books, or whatever or choose to have me as the closing keynote speaker of your conference. So to me, like, that's just how I view everything now, and I don't expect anything. I don't expect to ever be given anything. I don't expect for anyone to ever hire me. I don't expect them to do it unless I've consistently earned it every single day leading up to that moment. So that's why I find it so valuable to draw from the failures and from the mess ups early on in your life, or any part of your life, because it can shape, again, using your word, it can shape how you approach each and every interaction moving forward.
Yeah. Well, that's rich. That's strong. Monday night, you were probably, being a huge football fan, were probably watching Monday Night Football, particularly with, the way the playoffs are starting to shape up, and the interest, that goes into that, which teams are hot and which ones are not. And we experienced Damar Hamlin going through cardiac arrest. Have you seen anything like that before in your career?
No, I haven't. It was. I don't think I've ever felt that way watching a football game. That I still feel like it's still kind of is emotional almost to think about having a 24-year-old kid essentially, just, and from all intents and purposes, from everything I've seen, he seems like an amazing leader, a great person in his community, and is an awesome family support as well. And I just hope so much for him. And I can't imagine what that's like. I just can't imagine what it's like for, obviously, first and foremost for him, his teammates, his coaching staff, and certainly his family. My mom, we talk about that just every week. Like, she hardly ever got to enjoy our games. She would watch our games and she would be there, but a lot of times she'd have to cover her eyes or be scared, especially me as a quarterback when I get hit hard or get sacked. It's just tough on those people who love you as well. So, man, I'm just hoping like crazy that he continues to improve and gets better. But I've never experienced anything like what happened to him.
Yeah, I did not play football like you did. I was a year or two in high school, played football, mostly flanker, and a little bit of linebacker. And most of my, injuries were those odd things. Someone steps on your ankle in a pile up, get your hand smashed. We didn't wear gloves as much in those days, and so, and we lived up in the mountains, and yeah, it's not just something that we're saying, but our prayers are with the family and with this young man for sure. There is a strange spirit in the air right now across the country, I think, as we're all pulling for him, and the sport in general, the league in general, everyone is hopefully on the same page. We're just trying to have the wisdom to figure out what we do one step at a time.
Yeah.
Ryan, you changing gears a little bit. You posted something on LinkedIn, and it popped up on my feed, and I started reading it, and then I go, oh, this is a little more content than I thought. So I made a note to myself to read it later, and so I did. Later on in the day, I read through your reflection for 2022, with also a compass, for north, pointing north in 2023. I was struck by the exhaustiveness of it, the depth of it, and the transparency of it. Have you been doing this for a long time? Is this something new? Because I don't remember you talking about this particular step in some of your podcasts. Maybe I've missed it.
Yeah, I've started writing yearly reviews. I had interviewed my friend James Clear, who lives about an hour away in Columbus, Ohio. We've done a few podcasts together, and James, I don't know if he does them anymore, but he would always write these annual reviews, and I loved reading his, I remember. And so that probably started maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So at the end of the year, I would just try to recap. And the structure has actually been different every year. The one commonality I would hope that if you go back and read old ones, is the fact that I try to be pretty open, try to share the good stuff and the stuff that's not as well. It's funny though. I find that it's generated a lot of response this year, maybe more than ever, and that might be just be based on audience size, I guess. But the thing that seems to generate the most response is the areas where I've failed. Most people aren't respond. I mean, they'll say great year or whatever, but
Right.
when they're talking about specifics, that's usually in the areas where I've come up short. And so I think that's a key learning, that people they want to know the full story. They don't just want the highlight reel. And to me, I didn't really even think of that when I was writing it. I was just trying to write what happened. I was just trying to reflect on the year. This is what happened. This stuff was good, right? It was a good year. 2020 was a good year. This is what happened. Here's also what happened in relation to things that I wanted to do where I fell short and just didn't do it. And there weren't necessarily great excuses. It was just, here's what I did and here's why this worked out or why this didn't. And so I think it's a useful practice because not enough of us reflect regularly. And I think to become more self-aware, to understand yourself better, to understand if you're truly living out your values, you need to reflect. And I think one of the best forms of reflection is getting the thoughts out of your mind down onto the page. And I don't fully know what I think until I try to write about it. And so to me, writing, even though it's really hard and I struggle and I need help with just about everything that I write, I love the practice of it so that I can get a little bit more clear on what I'm thinking, as well as then get clarity on where I'm going. So I've been doing it for a few years. I like it. I think in this case this year it was a series of prompts that I answered, just questions. I got those questions from clients that I work with, meaning that I asked them to respond to, as well as they've posed some questions to me that I added to that review. So I think it's just a useful process, not just like on the business numbers that a lot of business leaders do, but actually on themselves as leaders to help develop and get better and improve, and also to mark where you've fallen short, and maybe you could try to understand why, as well as in how you could fix it moving forward. So that's really what I try to do. That actual document that you read started as a private one that I was sharing with my one-on-one senior executive clients, and then I just decided to publish it. I cleaned it up a little bit, but for the most part, I didn't really change anything. I just kind of left it all out there. I remember a few early readers said, like, are you sure you want to leave some of these kind of failures in there? I'm like, well, I don't think it's an honest reflection of the year if you only leave the good stuff in there. Yeah. You kind of got to leave it all in there. And so that's what I did, and it seems to generate a good response, which is great. It's a learning for me for future years too. Hey, don't manufacture failures, but if you have the things you mess up, which we all do, just tell that part of it too.
Ryan, I really enjoyed reading it. And where I align with you on that is I have noticed over the years, and maybe it's taken me too long to recognize this, but whether I'm giving a sermon, whether I am speaking in a conference room, whether I'm doing one-on-one, whether I'm speaking to my grandkids or even my adult children, if I start off with the phrase, what I didn't see, where I failed, where I came short, I seem to get the attention of the room. Versus this is how you do this is how you do that. And, that can come later. Because if I say, boy, if I would have known this, if I would have looked into that, if I would have maybe slowed down and I would have solved this, then that can set up the room or the learning opportunity for a posture that is more open, to what I might be saying. Because it's funny that you say that. I wasn't going to comment the way I just did, but you reminded me that I too went more to what you didn't do that you had hoped to do. And I'll be honest with you, Ryan, I don't know how you do it, because I've always been known as a high energy guy, but when I read through that, I was exhausted. I don't know. I don't know how
Exhausted by what?
your activity and what you've
Oh.
gotten done. I mean, I was just impressed. I'm going, man, I thought I had a lot of energy. I don't know that I want to compete with Ryan. I mean, this guy just goes.
Well, fortunately, we don't have to compete. There's plenty for all of us, man. And I think,
Right.
no, I think part of that stems though from, I mean, again, it stems back to the work ethic developed early on that I've just maintained. That seems just quite normal for me now, just to get up. It also is the fact that I'm doing the work that I literally would do if I had won the lottery. So I'm doing the work that I really want to be doing. I think that helps you show up each day, even if you don't feel as good, and want to do it, because it's literally what I want to do. And I wrote that at the end of this 2022 review, which, like, if there's a goal that I've set, it's just to do more things that I want to do with the people I want to do them with. And that's kind of broad, but that's what I think, that's how I would probably define freedom, is creating a system and creating a business where I can do the things I want to do with the people I want to do them with. And that's a combination of, leadership circles and keynote speaking and writing books, and certainly the foundation of everything is doing what we're doing right now, is having a deep, long-form conversation with one other person who's far wiser than me, and then publishing those conversations so that the other people get to learn. Like, that's my favorite thing to do. So that's really how I try to view it. And I also think that's the avenue for me to have probably the most impact that I can. And ultimately, like, that's kind of where the purpose comes in. Like, what's your purpose? What are you doing? Well, I want to impact people to strive and value excellence. And I think I've created a few avenues and ways to do that. Now I just want to keep, like, pouring gasoline on that fire. And that's really what I hope this year is all about.
Well, yeah, when I stepped away from it, your reflection, I said stuff to myself like this. I used to do those. Why don't I do those anymore? And then I began to realize that in the process of my own life and philosophy, what I have created that I work with is what I call a playbook. And it's something that we have created. But the weakness, now that I'm looking at it, what's really good about our system is we have a weekly review system, and we use our calendar as a weapon, if you will. But it's the gears, using engineering, or maybe an easier analogy is the bicycle. So it's kind of built on the smaller sprocket. So what's missing, what I realized after reading your reflection, we forgot about that big sprocket where you just sit back for a minute and take in the whole year, or whatever length of time that is longer than the grind, and sit there and appreciate that. So thank you for doing that. I think our listeners need to be encouraged too. What is your form of reflection? And I think it affects not only gratitude and appreciation or get to the next level, but you do take that look in the rearview mirror so that you can look through that windshield in a clearer fashion. So how are you setting goals nowadays, and what do you believe about goals? Because it's been really fun, and I mean fun, not smiling. Most of the time I listen to your podcast, because they're generally give or take an hour. They can be a little bit less, they can be a little bit more. I'll run on a Monday, and sometimes I won't get through it all, and so it's on pause. And then when I drive into town on Tuesday, I finish it. So that's kind of my routine. And I also listen to mine as a review. You want to shoot yourself in the head when you listen to your own stuff. But through the years, you've been interviewing other leaders in regards to goal setting, accomplishing goals. And some said, there's so many different nuances of how people approach it. And I can tell that has added a lot of riches to you, where are you at in your belief system and your philosophy and how you are going about setting goals and accomplishing the goals and what you believe in them? I mean, you hinted on it a little bit. You gave a broad idea of what you want to do.
Yeah, I'm just more process-oriented goal than results-based goal. I think there is something to it. I've done a lot of research. I've talked to Steve Magnus and Brad Stulberg about this recently, and they've uncovered a lot of research that I've read on results-based goal setting versus process-oriented goals. So to me, it's really about living my values. My 4 core values are thoughtful, thankful, curious, and consistent. And so really to me, it's clearly defining the behavior sets that go along with being thoughtful, thankful, curious, and consistent. And if I do each of those each day and I stack day after day after day, it's probably going to be a good year. So that's I'm more focused on the system. I'm more focused on the behavior, and then believing that the score will take care of itself, as Bill Walsh's book says. And so to me, I think the process, if someone else is trying to do it, or if they care to mimic something like this, which I feel like it's shifting a bit, it's really getting very clear on what are your core values, what are the behavior sets that align with those values, and then the prompts at the end of each day are, did I do those things? Did I behave in that manner? And I firmly believe if you stack enough of those days consistently, that good things will happen. So that's really what I do. I don't set it. I have not set any other goals beyond living out those values each day. And I found when I do that, great opportunities seem to arise. The results seem to follow. It's more about living with the inner scorecard versus the outer one. The inner one's about my code, my values, what's important to me, versus the outer scorecard is what's maybe important to society or maybe the wrong people. The outer scorecard might be what kind of car I drive or the watch I wear or the size of my house or houses. It's not. I think it takes time to get there, to focus more on the inner scorecard than the outer one. And I'm definitely a work in progress and have bad days when it comes to this. But for the most part, I think I'm getting a bit better each day at living more true to that inner scorecard versus the outer one. And I think that could bring a lot more fulfillment and ultimately a lot more impact on other people if I'm able to live out my days in that way. But it's certainly not foolproof. I'm not. I make mistakes as I've written about, but that's what I aspire to do, and that's how I view goals. I mean, every team wants to win the Super Bowl. Every team sets out to win the Tour de France. I mean, James Clear has written about this. Others have talked about this. Ultimately, it's really about marrying the process and divorcing the results. The results kind of are going to be what they are. Some of those are out of my control. I would rather focus on the things that I know are within my control. And if I am good about consistently focusing on those things, I like my chances of things going well. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I still think I have pretty good direction, despite not setting BHAGs or those big, hairy, audacious goals as Jim Collins has written about. I think that to me is a way to be more fulfilled and to be much more present when I'm with each and every person, most notably my family, the people who are most important. And so that's what I try to do. I mean, one kind of specific around that is in Dayton, Ohio, here where I live, it's cold. It's going to be cold for the next few months. It's been cold for the past few months. I do work longer and harder when it's cold outside so that when the pools open in the spring and summer, I'll leave and get out of here a bit early and go swimming with my family. Like that's an activity we love. A specific activity within the pool I love is throwing my 8-year-old, soon to be 9-year-old daughter Charlie in the air. Those days are finite, meaning she's going to grow and get too big to the point where I won't be able to do that anymore.
I've seen pictures of you doing that. Yeah,
I know that. Yeah, I know this because I have older ones as well who are at that stage already. So I'm very aware of the limited amount of time of these very special moments. And so that takes planning, that takes intention, that takes being deliberate. And I try to do that. So some of these specific goals are things like going on a certain number of walks with my wife or throwing Charlie in the pool because of how the smiles that create. That to me, as my friend Todd Henry told me, that's more about building a life than building a business. And I think about both of those things. But when it comes to the priority list, I mean, I think I would hope most people have that in the right order. And to me, it's the family stuff comes first, and everything else I do is to support that element of it. That doesn't mean I don't work hard or work a lot. It just means that I try to plan and get ahead of things so that I can take advantage of maybe better weather or pools or whatever it may be that I found brings joy to me and my family.
Ryan, a lot of people might label you and I as more entrepreneurial, and therefore having a little more freedom to decide how we're going to do this and do that. So when you're speaking to an audience of leaders in the corporate world that tend to get caught up in what Covey would call quadrant one, or the tyranny of the urgent, what advice do you have for them to kind of redirect their internal ship and reap some of the benefits from doing this hard work? Does that make sense?
It's hard for me. I think the world has shifted where it's become a bit more flexible with hybrid working, with different parts of it. But I do see this firsthand every day. My wife works for a fantastic tech company based in Silicon Valley. She works out of our home office. So I do understand and see her calendar and see how crazy it is. She's a leader within their business, and it is hectic. It is tough. There is a lot of fires. There are a lot of fires. There is a lot of the quadrant one stuff of the urgent. So yeah, I think our setup's probably a little bit different, but it takes a lot of time and effort to get to the current place where we're at. I still think, though, depending on the schedule and how you want to make the most of your family, you gotta kind of figure out what's best for you. And so in my case, I do a lot of work when my family is asleep, most notably in the early hours. Especially on the weekends. I mean, I've worked every Saturday and Sunday for the last 8 years. I haven't taken a single one of them off. So Saturdays from 4 to 7:30. So that's a 3.5 hour, like, hard, deep work, both Saturday and Sunday, every Saturday and Sunday for the last 8 years. I would say that helps me get ahead of things before I go in and work out. And so there's a lot of work, and there's a lot of time working when it's quiet, when it's dark outside, when it's cold, when people aren't necessarily around. Because a lot of my business is there's a lot of preparation needed. I got to read. I got to really study my guest. I have to really get prepared for those big moments, whether I'm getting ready for a keynote speech or I'm getting ready for a podcast or I'm doing the deep work of writing a book. So a lot of that can happen in that kind of 4 to 7:30 range when everybody else is asleep. So you just got to, I figure that out. That's what's best for me. That's when I'm most creative. That's when I feel pretty good. My dad's an early riser. My younger brother's an early riser. I'm one as well. Maybe there's something in the genetics there, but to me, you got to figure out what that is for you, and not skimp or skirt the work that's needed in order to be excellent at whatever your job is. And then you can hopefully build in or create a system where you can still focus on and be a part of the most important parts of your life, which, again, for most of us, it's our families.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you say is acknowledge the challenges, but be solution oriented, have a bias towards action, figure that out. In your book, The Pursuit of Excellence, you set up what you're talking about right now on page 36 and 37, where you tell the story of Michael Phelps and his single focus. Do you remember that?
Yeah, the Chad LeClos story. Yep.
Yeah. Can you tell that story real quick?
Yeah, I mean, he's there's a lot of trash talk leading up to that moment, but ultimately I think it comes down to the picture that a lot of people have probably seen. But Michael Phelps is myopically. Now, by the way, Michael Phelps, a very results goal oriented person. Now, I would argue that he probably achieved those results because of the system that him and his coach put in place every day, as far as what he would eat and how he would train in the pool, and being very specific on the daily action. So while he is very results oriented goal focus, I think the reason that he achieved those results is because of the system they put in place. So anyway,
I'd agree. Yeah.
In this case, though, the story is about being focused on the thing that's directly in front of you instead of all the other noise around you. There's this iconic picture taken as Phelps is Phelps. I don't believe he was a favorite in this race, and I think it was a butterfly. Chad Leclos, I believe, he might have set a record, or he was the favorite.
That was his thing. Yeah, that was his thing.
He was the favorite to win the race. Again,
Right.
a lot of trash talking and beatboxing, and Phelps was just very focused before this race. And they go down the wall, and as they're coming back, you see this picture of Phelps swimming perfect stroke, head directly straight, looking at the wall, and you see Leclos looking to his left, right at Michael Phelps. And really, the gist of the story is some have argued that maybe that's just how Leclos breathed, meaning he lifted his head and turned it sideways. Although some guys breathe just straight up in the butterfly, which is what they're
Especially the
swimming.
butterfly. Right.
Yeah, right. But and so some of them have said that. I've gotten some feedback on that. But regardless, it's the story still works. Leclos focused on the competition, whereas Phelps is focused on the wall. And to me, it's what is your wall? What can you be focused on that's directly in front of you, as opposed to all of the noise around you or the other people? And in a world full of Instagram and TikTok and craziness around you, it's very easy to get distracted and to focus on the wrong things. And my argument is to try your best to be focused on whatever the wall is in your life.
When I see my grandson in a butterfly race that he wants to win, I also see him in that situation, to your point, skip a breath. He knows that he can get there without the breath, and he's so focused on it, he just sucks it up, so to speak, and he goes. And then I think you kind of set this tone up about being process oriented with that story. And on page 39. It says high achievers focus on the daily action rather than the results. That's what you've been talking about. They commit to the process. On page 40, you say before, and I love this. This kind of reminds me of biblical wisdom in the book of Proverbs, where it says before you begin any project, it's wisdom to know what it's going to take to finish that project. And in the words of your book on page 40, it says before setting a goal. Now you might, in stating this, I'm not sure if you are being practical or you're being philosophical or both, but it says, before setting a goal, think about the daily actions it will take to achieve that goal. That sounds both philosophical and practical to me.
Yeah, I think it's highly practical. It's really about action. We learn who we are in practice, not in theory, right? The Herminia Ibarra quote that I also write about. You really learn when you do it. And so when it comes to whatever goal or whatever system you have in place, it's measuring what do you do? Like, what are you actually doing each day, living those out? And so, again, this is where I think you got to start at the foundation of what are your core values, and then building the behavior sets off of each of those values. So I frankly, it doesn't matter what your values are because they're yours. I think it matters. You need to know them. You need to figure out what that is. And that takes work, and maybe even getting help from someone in your kitchen cabinet or somebody who is a mentor of yours to help you get clear on, okay, like, what do I really value? And I have exercise I do with my clients that for this. But regardless, it's getting clear on that, then taking the next step to what are the behaviors that align with each of those values. And then the next step is at the end of each day, some very simple, basic prompts that ask you, did I live out this value? If my value is being curious, which is one of my 4 core values, one of the prompts I ask myself at the end of the day is, what questions did I ask of people wiser than me? What did I learn from those people? How did I listen to what they say? What follow-up questions did I ask? Those are almost always better than the initial questions. And those are very simple prompts that I can answer very quickly that can then measure if it was a good day. And a good day is defined to me by living out those values. So for you, whatever it is, for anybody, getting clear on what those are, getting clear on the behaviors, and then just asking yourself at the end of each day if you live them out. And I believe if you stack day after day after day of living those out, again, these are all behavioral based, these are all process oriented. I believe if you stack those days good things will happen. Good opportunities will come to you. The results will probably follow, right? We're not going to bat 1,000, but for the most part, good things will happen. So that's what I think the problem, Jim, I think, is a lot of us, and this happens to me for sure, to all of us, is that the days are wild and hectic and there are fires. And as you said, you live in the urgent quadrant too much, and you do too many things that are urgent but not important, and not enough of the things in the quadrant that are important but not urgent. And I am pushing people to live, or at least spend more time in the important but not urgent column. With that said, I work with a number of very busy senior level executives, and this is a constant battle. I mean, it never ends. It is a never-ending battle working with them. And sometimes we get into these, not arguments, but probably disagreements where they say, dude, you don't get it. You don't understand. You don't. It's just too hard. There's just too much going on. I have 2,500 people reporting to me, and I have this list of 58 things. It's always urgent all the time. There's always fires. And I say, I get it. But you are stacking days, not doing anything important and only doing things urgent. So what's happening now, and you don't realize it because it's not a problem today, 9 months from now, 15 months from now, you have progressively gotten worse because you've done nothing to develop yourself. You've only been fighting fires. And to me, like, it doesn't happen fast. It happens slowly, and that's why people don't see it. And sometimes you'll meet somebody, or let's say you reconnect with a person you haven't seen in 3 or 4 years, and you'll notice a big gap. If you've been working hard on yourself to develop yourself and they haven't, they've been fighting fires the whole time, which I understand. It's life. You'll notice there'll be a bigger gap between kind of where you're at. That doesn't mean you're better than them. It just means there's just a bigger gap in where you are. And I think that's kind of the evidence that tells me I'd rather stack these good days living my values as opposed to stacking days just fighting fires all day. And maybe I'm privileged to be able to say that given the work that I do, but I've also worked with some insanely busy people with thousands of people that report to them that are good at this. And they're the ones who then become CEOs or hit whatever career milestones they want because they realize the importance of it, and they're not going to waver on that. And that's part of kind of like the message I'm really pushing on people.
Ryan, that is so strong. I wrote down some of those sound bites there that I can put into my own paragraph for a presentation I'm making in February, because and I think the way I want to do it in working with these leaders in a conference room is maybe where I have failed as an advisor is, and then I want to dive into this. I love the phrase progressively become worse instead of better, and I can build upon that. That is really powerful insight, because like your experience, I've had the exact same thing. You don't get it. In fact, I think I've heard that exact same phrase. You don't get it. And boy, it's tough. And what I love about your input here is that listening to you for, like I said, probably 4 years, what I find fascinating about you, and why I so much appreciate you being part of our ministry here at the Today Count show, is that you have this, and maybe they're married. The more I think about it, maybe the words curiosity and humility, or if they're not brother and sister, they're at least first cousins. And have you always been a curious person, or have you developed that? Where did that come from? Because what I want to do is I want to build a bridge on that and talk about, if you'll let me, I would like to I wasn't planning on doing this today, but I would like to step into your business, because I've watched your business grow, and I there's some questions I have for you on that. But back to the question: have you always been curious? Have you developed it? What's your answer to that?
I don't think so. Earlier on, we talked at the beginning of our conversation about sports. I would say I was very focused on just playing sports all the time growing up, even into college. When it came to academics, my mentality was really just as a, and I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this, but my mentality was really like, what do I have to do to get an A in the class? I just wasn't as, I wasn't as curious to learn. Where the curiosity started developing, I would say, is I got my MBA. It took me 6 years to get my MBA because I did it while I was working. So I was going to class at night and stuff like that.
Sure.
And at the end of it, I was like, man, this wasn't that fun. I didn't get to pick my teachers. I didn't really get to pick the topics. I wanted the certification of getting an MBA. I thought it helped me in my career, and that's why I did it. I didn't really do it because I really was, I cared to learn. But my company reimbursed me $5,250 a year, which is the amount most companies pay, $5,250 a year. Most companies reimburse on educational items. And I felt like since I'd used that for 6 years, I was wasting income to me if I didn't go back to school. And I was looking at kind of PhD programs in leadership or management. And at that time, I even kind of was in the initial application stages of that. At the time, I was also a podcast listener to some friends' shows, as well as guys like Todd Henry and Bill Simmons and Joe Rogan, some of the earlier podcasters. And I thought, like, I've done a lot of interviews for my work. I really want to learn this, like I want to go back to school, but I want it to be focused on leadership, and I want to get like a leadership PhD if that even exists. But I didn't really see anything out there like that. And I thought, well, maybe I could create my own form of a leadership PhD program where I get to choose every single professor and I get to ask them questions, and then I will take notes and I will really try to digest what they're telling me so that I will become a better leader. And that's how the Learning Leader Show was born 8 years ago, out of my desire to earn a leadership PhD program. I would argue now, if you read through transcriptions or you listen to the show for years and taken notes like you do, and then read some of the books that have come from that and other things, I think it's far more valuable than any leadership PhD program you could get. Now, you don't get the certification, but I think the knowledge base and the ideas that you could then go and execute on are probably more valuable than any you could find. And the cool part, it's free. Anybody can listen, and they're all out there, all 500 plus episodes. So I would say my curiosity developed. Each person I talked to, I realized, oh my gosh, I thought I knew everything, and I now know nothing. I realize isn't it weird, the paradox? The more you learn, the more people you talk to, the more books you read, the more podcasts you listen to, the more you realize how little you know. It's bizarre how it works. Like it's completely backwards. But then it makes sense because you're going to start opening your mind to these ideas and to these people, and you're like, oh, I thought I knew everything because I was so closed off to it before. I just kind of lived in my own little world. Versus then you talk to Adam Grant, and then that leads to Simon Sinek, and then that leads to Seth Godin, and then that leads to Kat Cole, and that leads to Liz Weissman. And before you know it, you're like, man, I don't know anything in comparison to these super wise people I'm talking to. And so in a way, like the curiosity, I do think it kind of has to come from within you at whatever the right time is for you. But then once that gets rolling, man, it is so powerful, because to me, it just keeps growing. And I get asked every once in a while, like, don't you get like burnt out or tired of doing it? No, opposite. I feel the opposite. I am more energized now than I've ever been to do it, because I realize there's so much more to learn. And there's no arrival date, right? It's this always becoming mindset. And so that's what excites me the most about continuing to go. But to get back to your question, yeah, I think the curiosity has absolutely been fostered. It's been something that's a learned skill, and it absolutely is a skill. It's been learned. And it just, for me, timing was important. And I think I was too immature earlier on to develop the skill of curiosity.
Man, boy, leaders could really get a lot of benefit if they can adjust their dial and become stronger learners. You know, 2 of the last 6 books that I have read in the format, in the way that I've shared with you earlier, have come from your show. And because it is an incredible resource. It's just an absolutely incredible resource. Also, when you started the Learning Leaders Show, was your vision? Give me an overview again of everything that you now do as a result of the podcast. I mean, I know you do some one-on-one work, you do keynotes, you have the academy, but do a quick overview of that, and then maybe comment. Was this always the vision, or has it kind of grown step by step by step as you've been looking at what's available to do?
As far as the business elements of what I do,
yeah.
no plan, no business plan. No, the I started the show when I had a full-time job.
I remember you saying that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had no intention of ever leaving. I loved my job and my teammates and the people I got to work with. I had actually got a promotion in the midst of still doing my show, and I intended to continue to do it. Late 2017, though, I had a pretty big role as VP of sales at a company where we were in charge of about $500 million in my segment of the business. It was a big job. But the market was telling me that there was a lot of demand, meaning asking for one-on-one, like leadership advising type work, asking primarily a lot of keynote speaking. People at other companies asking me to develop leadership development programs, which is something I'd never done before. So the market essentially was telling me there is something here, and I don't think I would have ever left a full-time job if not for that. And then once I did, with the help of a mentor, got the idea of creating these leadership circles, which are essentially paid mastermind groups, and that's become a huge part of my business and one of the most fulfilling and gratifying things I do, because I curate these groups, lead the groups. I'm actually going to start having guest teachers in 2023, but it's bringing together people from a wide variety of industries and geographies and different life experiences to learn together, where I've then built out the curriculum over the past 4 years. So those circles have become big. So as far as how the business works, my Learning Leader Circles is a huge part. There'll be 4 of those running in 2023. I will be leading 3 of them. There's keynote speaking, which is about 30 to 40 of those a year. I have one tomorrow, in fact, that I'm going to Columbus for. So that's a big part. Keynote speaking is a really big part. It's certainly a very profitable part of the business. One-on-one work with senior leaders, I do some of that. That's not a big part. I don't advertise that. It's nowhere to be found on my website, but it is something that I get requests for and do a little bit of. I write books. So that's something that I intend to continue to do, write books. That's a part of it. I built an online school, the Learning Leader Academy, which people are taking on their own time, which is something I built a couple years ago with my dad. And yeah, I mean, those are the main parts of the things that I would say I spend the bulk of my time doing. So, but heavy time spent. I mean, the podcast advertisements is also another pretty lucrative element of the business that I would not have ever planned for, but is nice because it can still provide the show for free to everyone while we monetize it, and hopefully have advertising partners that are actually useful to my listeners. I try to be very selective in those, so that they're ones that my listeners would enjoy and appreciate and could get value from. So those are the primary ways that we monetize it, and it's been pretty good. But no plan. There was no plan at the beginning of this. There still isn't much of a plan. I mean, it's really just focusing on the day-to-day actions, and that seems to create really, really cool opportunities.
Have you added people to your team, Ryan?
I have a lot of contractors. So I have a wide variety of people that are on a contracting base. So like whether it's my podcast editor, producer, my video team, I have a head of research who does all my research when it comes to, I send him ideas that I want to write about, and I want to make sure that it's backed by scientific research, not just my thoughts. So he's constantly working, and then I have a couple of editors who edit everything I write, whether they're articles or books. So they're a part of. I mean, all those I would say are part of the team, but but yeah, I'll continue to do that, certainly.
So I'm giving page numbers just so that if a listener decides to pick up your book, they can go right to these things.
Sure.
But on page 95, in my notes, I put, boy, great coaching question. I think I remember. It's funny how you can pick up tools, but if you lay those tools down, you will forget, that you had them. But you lay this out. What is something that I should start doing? What is something that I should stop doing? And what is something that I should continue doing? Just, that's a triad of really good thinking when it comes to what we've been talking about: building something, growing something, goals, our personal life, and as you said, building the kind of life that you want. Really, really powerful.
Yeah, I love the start, stop, continue exercise. This is one I did many years ago, starting with an HR partner when I worked in corporate America, where I would not be in the room, and my HR partner would go with my team and say, what should Ryan start doing? What should he stop doing? What should he continue doing? And it's actually a pretty enlightening exercise. If your team is not able to say anything at all negative, then you've probably have not created a psychologically safe culture, and that's a bad thing for a leader. So I remember that happened like my first after 6 months as a manager. Nobody said anything negative about me. And I was like, look at me, to the HR partner. I'm amazing. Like, there's nothing bad. There's nothing wrong. And she goes, no, that's not a good sign. Your people you have not created an environment where they feel safe. So eventually, as I improved, it's funny, there was more and more negative feedback, or I don't know if I'd say negative, but things for me to work on. So or the start part of it's pretty cool, because that it gives them an open forum for their ideas, which I want, and for anybody's ideas. So yeah, you ask anybody, like, what should I start doing, stop doing, continue doing? The continue is nice. It's usually reinforcement on what you're doing well, and that's good to know, right? The stop is super helpful, because sometimes you mess things up and you're not aware of it, and you need feedback. And then the start, again, is the open forum for ideas, which it's funny, like the first leadership circle I'm running this year with my friend Matthew Dix, who's a world-class storyteller and teacher. That was an idea of a member of my circle who said, is there a way you could bring in a guest teacher? I am really bad at telling stories, communicating in general. My town hall speeches aren't that good. I need to get better. Could you do that for us? And I thought, that's actually a great idea. And if you want that, I would imagine there are others. And we filled up that group in like a week. And so like stuff like that can happen, but I think you do have to have an open mind and do these exercises to garner the ideas from people, because we're probably better off like using all of our brains as opposed to just one. So you never know really what can happen. But I advise everybody. Like, I do 360s for senior execs too, where I'll interview people who are ahead of them, beside them, and behind them in the org chart. And the start, stop, continue is is one of the foundational questions in my 360s that I do. And it's actually one of the harder ones for people to answer. But once they get into it, and you get them talking, and you really like push them a little bit from time to time, that's usually where the best stuff comes out, is when you do the start, stop, continue.
Yeah, you've really created a voice. That's pretty obvious. And I appreciate the time that you've given. I just have a couple quick questions for you, but I want to make this comment too. I think another small gold nugget in your book is about building charisma. And the nugget of that is on pages 111 to 112, that I think probably every leader in the world needs to listen. There's a read and to look at that. They're just small things that everyone can change if they just look at those kinds of things. And I can go on and on. I think you did a fantastic job. There's a lot of work that you put into the book, and so just congratulations on that. I'm sure you are achieving some success, and it will continue to be recognized, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, it means a lot. I mean, books are hard. It's one of the more challenging things to do, and that's why I like to do them, because it pushes my edges. It makes me really think and reflect, and it's the ultimate the ultimate tool to create clarity. So I'm a big proponent of having a writing practice. All leaders should be writing. All leaders should be trying their best to get clear. And one of the best ways to do that is to get the thoughts out of your mind onto the page.
Great. Ryan, just two more things. One is, I wonder what's on your mind. What is most on your mind right now? It's a wide open question, but I would love to pick your brain on that. And then for those who have never heard of the Learning Leader Show, let's end with you talking about that so that people can learn about that as well.
Well, Learning Leader Show is my podcast. It can be found anywhere you listen to podcasts. On all there, it's everywhere. It's also on YouTube, and all of that stuff that goes with it for free is on learningleader.com. So everything's at learningleader.com. And what was your first question again?
What are you thinking about right now? What's most on your mind? Whether it's a big thing in the world, whether it's in your business. What are you learning? What is most on your mind right now?
We talked about it briefly earlier, but I'm thinking a lot of the internal versus external scorecard and focusing on the one that I think matters most, which is what's internal to you, and living out that code and setting those values and the behaviors that match. So that's been the theme of this conversation, but that's probably because it's what's in the forefront of my mind right now. And I admire people who are really good at that. I try to surround myself with them. Hope some of that kind of rubs off on me as I'm trying to do the same. But to me, yeah, I mean that's ultimately what I think is most important, is figuring out like what is your inner scorecard, what are your values, and how are you living them out versus what is flashy or popular within society. And I think the ones who seem to leave a dent and to make the most impact on others, especially as leaders, are those who are pretty clear on that and are able to live it out each day.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much for the time that you have invested. Really appreciate it, hearing you out and hearing a little bit more of detail in what you're doing, what you're believing, what you're learning. And it's been great. And again, thanks for what you're doing in the world. It's making a difference.
Thank you, Jim. Who would you say, like after your conversations, when you think about those who have sustained excellence over an extended period of time, what have you found to be some of the commonalities among those people?
Yeah, I think that it's an oversimplification, but one of the things is that they always know what they're after, and for example, man, you're hitting me, right in the heart, because I don't know what made you. I mean, I know you asked that question a lot. I wasn't expecting it today, but I think for me, one of the things that I'm learning, that I've made mistakes in all of my leadership in the organizations that I have led, and can probably still make the same mistake today, is that inside of every skill set and every talent, there's a human being. And it's, in my opinion, more important to know who that human being is, because sooner or later that human being leaks out and either appreciates or depreciates the shiny thing that I saw. So one of my biggest mistakes has been being blinded by the glitter in others. And so kind of what I'm looking at now today, and what I've noticed about leaders, is they are sober in their judgment, and they know where they're going, but they're not panicked about how to get there. So that's what I mean about they have a focus on what they want to do. I have one of my mentors said this to me, and you can't apply it 100% in every context, but he says that when he hires, and he says, Jim, it's old school, but here's my old school belief. I like hiring people that I know, or if I don't know them, I know somebody who knows them. And I like keeping that, close. It's just too much at stake. And I know Peter Drucker is in our rearview mirror in the sense of how time goes by, but in his research, he said that even if you have a good hiring practice, you have about a 30% chance of hitting it out of the park. So that's kind of scary. So I think my answer to you is the sustaining thing is someone who's doing the hard work like you are doing and asking the hard questions. So another way to say it, if they don't know what their no's are, they have a hard time figuring out what their yes is. So for me, that's kind of what I've been focused on, because I have a hard time, to be honest with you. I'm a very entrepreneurial person, and I have a difficult time figuring out all the things to say no to so that I can say yes to the most important things.
Man, that's really good. Thank you.
Well, Ryan, thank you, and God bless you. And I will be tuning in. For me, like I said, every Monday morning. I know that they come out. I think they come out Sunday nights, don't they?
Yeah. Every Sunday at 7 Eastern. Yeah.
Well, have a great day, and thank you for the investment that you continue to make.
Thanks. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate you having me.